associates. So let's get into today. So today's conference is going to be focused on improving your automation, your maintenance, and your reliability programs. And as automation and maintenance professional, knowing to maximize your asset reliability and avoiding machine downtime are imperative to your team and your overall operations. So we are thrilled today to have such a diverse group of industry leaders, experts, and innovators who will be exploring how we can collectively advance our practices in industrial maintenance and operational excellence. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Klaus. Dr. Blache has over 35 years of experience in various areas of manufacturing and continuous improvement for process and people. Included are areas such as lean manufacturing, reliability and maintenance, competitive analysis, R&M tools and techniques, new facility planning and implementation, industrial engineering, process benchmarking, safety, ergonomics, and change management. What haven't you done? He has written over 300 magazine articles, 2 books, and lectured globally in numerous technical and management areas and helped numerous Fortune 500 companies with strategies and implementation. Klaus is currently at the University of Tennessee as the Director of Reliability and Maintainability Center, the RMC, and the research professor at the College of Engineering. The RMC represents the college's 7 engineering departments to industry for R&M professional development. Prior to that, his most recent corporate assignments was Manufacturing Engineering Director, Engineering Launch Manager, North American Manager of Manufacturing Reliability and Maintenance, and Manager of Industrial Engineering for General Motors. Klaus is a past 2-year chairman of the Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, helping to initiate it. And his current focus is on implementing processes to enable operational excellence, including changing cultures to enable that transition and sustainable continuous improvement. This includes transitioning the current workforce and culture to Industry 4.0, proactive maintenance, and accountability. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Blache to the podium.
Thank you. I think that was the whole talk, right? Just about. Yeah, I think the toughest decision I had to make this morning was, do I wear tennis shoes to be comfortable? Because I came from another job I was doing, and I was assessing plants. So I had these big safety work boots and my tennis shoes. So that was my choice. I said I could look practical, I could look comfortable, so I got tennis shoes. So, but what we're going to do today is well, first of all, I'm glad to be here. We've tried a few times, and schedule is always crazy. If I'm not booked way in advance, I was doing something else. And what we want to talk about is RCM, Reliability Centered Maintenance, but really that's such a big picture thing. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. It's going to be pretty fast paced, but it all has to tie back to reliability centered maintenance. And the godfather of RCM really is John Mowbray, who wrote the RCM2 book and a lot of those areas. And I was fortunate to meet him a long time ago. He's passed away since about 14 years ago, but I met him a long time ago in Aberdeen, Scotland. And I was fortunate that his wife sent me a lot of his original books. So I have all his stuff in different languages and all that. So it's a really nice keepsake, that gave to the university, obviously, that we use there and so on. But for today's purposes, what I want to do is talk to you about the important items that impact successful RCM implementation, reinforce, because I think a lot of you here are practitioners, reinforce, or if not, show how it's all related to enable improvements in operational excellence, because you will get operational excellence if you do it right, and discuss how reliability and maintainability can be used as a competitive advantage. And those that take the journey, they see the difference. And I'll try to show a little bit of everything as we go forward, and try to leave some time for Q&A at the end. So there's a lot of stuff going on. COVID changed a lot of things. I don't need to repeat all that. Right now there's different struggles going on, but regardless, you've got to do the reliability and maintainability, and you need to understand what's best practice. Do you really know what's best practice? It's kind of, do you know what you don't know? And what's best practice look like? I spent the last 3 days assessing facilities, for a company, and we do that and put them on a journey and so on. Where are you now? You got to be brutally honest. Where are you really at today? I'll show some slides of what I see from companies. Most companies think they're better than they are until they see the real data. You got to be brutally honest and say, where do you need to go next and how do you need to implement? And that's really the next one is how do you get there? It's easy to talk about, it's really tough to do. Now, how do you get there and what kind of changes do you need to make? And as it says around the right, over operational excellence can be attained by implementing an R&M best practices. But you need a journey. I mean, you need a path for a journey. Because I like to say, if you don't know where you're going, you may end up where you're headed. Yeah, think about that one a little bit. So, but you know, and this is a little tough to see. I'm not going to go through any kind of models and so on. We use a business excellence model that we put together, and probably the only things that the main things to read are the ones on the right. We kind of look at creating the culture first. Yes, it's organizational culture, but it's also data integrity. You trust your data enough to make the tough decisions. I work with Fortune 100 companies, and they got people on reliable analysis and reliability growth, and dang, they're so good, I wish I had them. And I says, why aren't you doing this? And they said, we don't trust the data off the plant floor. Cultural problem, right? Fortune 100 companies, yeah. And then, and again, I'm not going to here to teach the model, but next is more of the stuff you normally talk about: maintenance, the standardized work processes, preventive maintenance, the condition-based, the planning and scheduling, your CMMS system. And what's unique is studies I've done on CMMS systems, on average, regardless of which one you use, on average in North America, less than 30% of the capability of all CMS systems are ever implemented and used. Sounds kind of sad, doesn't it? And you know what the answers I get from the plants? It's closer to 20%. The plants I'm assessing right now, it's probably about 5%. That's pretty sad. So again, then how do you optimize and sustain? A little bits on life cycle purchasing, and do you design in for reliability and maintainability? There's 33 modules for designing in for maintainability, and it's real easy. You don't have to get in all that detail. Look at your purchasing specs. How many words are in there about design for reliability and maintainability when you buy a piece of equipment? And then how do you sustain the program? Is it a separate program in RCM? You do it on the total productive maintenance? Is it part of a lean program? I mean, I implemented lean plants, and we built the Tesla plant before. It was Toyota GM, and that was when I had industrial engineering. The lean, and that's how we. I use this slide for a while now. It's a little over 10 years old, but I think it's just a pivotal slide. And I asked, this is the result of thousands of global study. I asked them, what are you going to do to improve reliability and maintainability in the next 10 years? Number one is people and culture. There's 70% of the issue. If I look at just that first piece, this is that piece of the first piece of the pie broken out. In North America, people in culture is 26%. 13%. You say, what do we need to do different? I won't read through all this stuff. But in some of them, all the items in black were common around the globe. In North America, about much more. And then about skill improvement, material growth, things like that. In other places, there's no cooperation with machine suppliers. Everybody has the same problems around the world. But what's unique is, since they unique, they have the way. They also told me at the same time that if we don't get better at culture, we're not going to get better at the bottom line if we don't get better at the plant floor. And I've seen that now for 12 years. The improvement in North America on average in the last 12 years. Not changed. I didn't study during COVID because data was low. Here's I did the studies early on when I was still working for Germany. And you can see back there, way back in the 90s, it was a 54% reactive maintenance in North America. Students, and I usually slide from students, and that's 90% of companies in the world, and only about 10% was students. The students say, oh, Dr. Blake, you get that data. I did it. the students weren't born, you know, and a lot of that. Dinosaurs, I got bored, right? But look at the data. Well, it got better with all the stuff that happened. And then all of a sudden, around 2008 and 2010, when I was doing the study there, that's when they told me if we don't get better at code, we won't get any better. And all the way to 2022, we're still at 31% reactive maintenance percent in North America. Not individual plants, but on average. And I'll just do a shout out. You know, that twirly thing where it says benchmark survey, that's a baby boomer gone digital. That's as good as it gets, you know. But if anybody's interested in participating in the survey, on benchmarking, anybody that participates, just send me an email, say survey. I'll get you a copy. Participants get a free copy of summary of the results when I'm done. You know, I'm not looking to make money or anything like that, just share knowledge. So what's it going to take? You know, it's easy to say, let's get better at reactive remation, better at RCM. And if you don't do RCM, resource consuming monster, right? You got to do it. So what's it going to take? How much more proof do we need? What are you going to do about it? And it's tough to change cultures. And if you do something, let's just say not incorrectly, but not in a best practice way, that people do it long enough, they're going to argue and justify, we've always done it this way, it's the best way to do it, because that's what they know. And I maybe use a story way back, I'll use a story maybe when they were trying to break the 4-minute mile. I think it was a guy's name, Bannister. I think it was Roger, it was Bannister. And he was trying to break the 4-minute mile, and he was in a university in England, a medical student. He got so close, and within a fraction of a second or half a second off, couldn't break the 4-minute mile. And they wrote stories around the world saying, impossible, I don't know why he's trying, can't do it. He finally does it after about 3 years. He makes it. And what happens? 13 weeks later, another person does it. 6 weeks later, 3 people do it in the same race. How much of that was a mental problem and so on, and what you can do and not do and so on. So, you know, we need that evidence. Do you know what an hour of downtime or OEE is worth in your factory? Most of you that are in manufacturing, just OEE or some version of it. What is that? It's just a product of 3 numbers. You know, it's availability of your assets. It's your yield or performance. Like if you make 100 a week, did you make 95? So that's 95%. And what's your percent first time quality? You multiply those together and that's your OEE. And for manufacturing, you need to know what's 1% OEE worth. For a car company, if you have a couple plants or 2-3 plants, 1% OEE is about $20 million. What if I'm half right? Still a pretty good number. For petrochemical plants that I work with globally in different areas, 1% OEE is $250 million. It's okay just to be half right. It's big money. And from my studies, from about 200 facilities, I've seen returns on doing this 5 to 1 to 100 to 1, about average 15 to 20 to 1. Definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. But, you know, unfortunately, it's a journey, not an event. And we live in a world where short-term rewards, you know, are there for management and people at the plants and so on. And that's a long-term journey. That makes it tough. So I put this picture up here because I would say, you know, how do I talk about a paradigm shift? Saying, can you get there, that you want to do it the right way. A paradigm shift is simply that you have some scientific evidence or data that says, I see the data, now I understand and I believe that there's a better way to do it. You never want to go back to the old way. So I tried to show that with a picture to say, this is that picture that's been around. Actually, I found out it was done in the just before 1900, actually in a German cartoon magazine. And then later on, psychologists used it, and it's been around for a long time ever since. And if you look at this, looking to the right, you have a duck, and looking to the right, you have a rabbit. Looking to the left, you have a duck. Does everybody see both? Keep looking at it. And once you see both, you can never go back and see one. That's a paradigm shift, you know, visually at least. Is there anybody that doesn't see both? And go see a psychologist because they're using it. Yeah. They're using this and they'll talk to you about it. So, but anyway, so, all right. So why do you want to go top quartile? Right now, the top 25% in North America, 25% get it, 75% don't. I shouldn't say they don't get it, they can't get there. 25%, top 25% in North America, what do you think that is? 9% reactive maintenance. That's the top 25% in North America. The bottom quartile, the bottom 25% is 64%. So what does that tell you? There's a lot more reactive maintenance going on in the bottom quartile. And I have a slide later that'll look at the numbers, the costs related to that. I think I put it, if not, I'll mention it now. That if you're bottom quartile versus top quartile, it costs you over 6 times more to run the business of maintenance. 6 times more. That's not the cost of what you lose in production, quality, customer satisfaction. That's only the cost of maintenance. So the number is probably 10, 15 times higher. And the top quartile folks, they average 23% resources allocated towards predictive. And that could be condition-based, predictive technologies, analysis, and all that, doing the routes. That's not the work orders to do it. That's the finding. My benchmark data says you should be at 25% predictive maintenance. That's the finding, not the fixing. Another 30% fixing. So half your resources are finding, fixing, finding, fixing. All right, so that's your continuous improvement in reliability and maintenance day to day. And who is it? Einstein said that if you do the same thing every day and expect different results, what is that? Insanity. All right? And I see out there, I see maintenance insanity. When I look at it on a large enough window, everybody's fixing the same stuff over when you look at it over enough time. You know, they're not getting rid of their repeat failures. They were 27% better in OSHA recordables than the average of the remaining facilities. It's going to be more so if you're highly reactive. They average 7% higher in OEE, that number I mentioned, than the middle ones, and 11% higher in OEE. And you heard what I said about what 1% OEE is worth. Those are some real serious numbers. Now, what do I see? I put some of them down that I see the most. You know, why is it tough to change? Historical dysfunctional processes, ingrained culture, support the old processes, and so on. It's all the past failures, you know, all the tries. It's tough to make change, you know, and it changes with leaders. I mean, I've been in facilities that had a pretty good program, and the new leader says, oh, this should really be under lean. And he moves it from engineering to lean, but destroys the internal process that had a good reliability and maintenance process. I've been in other places where the VP of manufacturing asked me in and say, can you tell us a little bit about where we should be? And we never did any work in there, but, so I gave him a presentation. I had about 20 slides, and about less than halfway through, he stops and he says, wow, he says, you got really great data. This is really close to what we do. I goes, sir, this is your data. This is the 3rd time I'm here. I says, you were here, you were down here, you didn't do it. You were here, you were down here. The question is, what are you going to do different? I've given close to this presentation. This is my 3rd time. I've updated the numbers. Yeah. Oh, I see a phone. Sorry, let me shut this down. Oh, it says, make sure you're having a good time. All right. No. All right, so I shut that off. Many organizations think they're better than they are, how it's all related, and the impact on operational excellence isn't fully understood, especially not just in the other departments. Do you have in your, hopefully you have a mission or vision statement around reliability and maintainability if you're on that journey. But do you have an elevator talk? And people come up to you and say, what are you doing? All about? Do you have 3, 4, 5 sentences that everybody can say that? Or does it sound like a whole bunch of different stuff and people don't really understand what's going on? You should around reliability and maintainability. A lot of places. Unfortunately, now we're seeing a lot of people hiring lack of resources. So that causes other issues in the plant. And, you know, it's hard to find people. The operator can do basically and all that, you know, go on to be full-scale training. Too many companies try to get better at performance. Do the maintenance at all. That's what can you do that you don't have to do it again? It's not how do you do it better, faster, safely, but what is instill culture we talked about enough. For a good R&M program, that not sure. But usually it's, I look at 40 to 70 pages of report. We see a lot of stuff in plants. 1,000 cuts. It may be, oh, it doesn't seem like a big deal, and this doesn't seem like a big deal, and this doesn't seem like a big deal, but cumulatively it destroys your process. You can't examples. I have a list right, where just to get to the top of the system, unable to predict cost other than they go up. Skip the less critical PM checks. Well, and we're way behind. Let's just skip it this time. But do they count it, in their metrics or not? Struggle to find the correct part because it's not common coded. Learn that only some of the asset history is captured because the work orders aren't closed with enough detail. And don't perform root cause analysis, trending, and so on because they lack quality asset data or don't have the background to do reliability analysis. Just a few examples. I'm not going to go through the, again, everybody uses different models. This is the kind of the standard 8 pillars of TPM and so on. A lot more people are doing autonomous maintenance, and a lot more people are getting more of the operators involved because of lack of people. And it's got a lot of different names: operator-driven reliability, maintenance, operations partnership, and so on. It's got about 10 names that people are using out there. But I wanted to talk about this slide a little bit because when you implement lean manufacturing, it's against the people side of the business. We've implemented a lot of different places around the world. We did it in 30, but regardless of which country and wherever we did it, they all, within the first 5S. Why was that? You can do workshops with 5S, continuous improvement, all that, and that's all good. But what does 5S really do for you? To me, it tests the culture of discipline. If you can't do 5S well, you're not going to be really good at lean. It doesn't mean you get no benefit, but most places that are doing lean, they're lucky if they get half the benefits they could be getting because they don't have the culture of discipline, the accountability, and so on. So what 5S really does, it tests your culture of discipline. And that's part of trust, and that's part of accountability. To me, trust is simple. Trust for me is, what does my plant do when they think I'm not looking? When all the leadership is out, what do they really do? Doesn't mean everybody goofs off, but what kind of decisions do they make when you're not there? So if you're going to make change, you got to have the workforce readiness. And again, the OSHA recordables are tied into that. Like I said, just show some charts. Whoops. So safety gets better as you do more of that. The people side of the business, get the operators involved. Costs will get better. Each one of those points is about 40 to 60 plants. So operations and things get better as you get the operators involved. This one's from Curie Coffee. They did that at our Marcon conference. We do an annual conference every year in March. It's actually number 30 next year. And we take the Knoxville Convention Center, and it's 4 tracks of papers, 18 learning workshops, all that, typical conference. But what I like about this chart, the line going up to the right is improvement in reliability on a Keurig production line. And that coffee K-Cups, they make most of their money doing K-Cups for about 12 different companies. They only make a little bit of money on theirs. They're doing everybody else's coffee and K-Cups. But what's more important is to see all those squiggly lines up and down. That's variability in the production process day to day. And those squiggly lines are getting closer and closer as you go to the right also. So what that tells me is the process is getting under control. So day to day, it's getting more stable and closer to what it's supposed to be able to do. And it's kind of like what Deming said, if you're going to do continuous improvement, you got to first stabilize the process so you don't really know what you're improving. And I had the opportunity to work with Deming a long time ago, much older than I look. I'm just kidding. Actually, when we started the reliability process, he was working with our engine plants, and I was in an engine plant at the time, a really young guy, and all that, so we looked at when I started the reliability process for GM. What I looked at was what do people care about most? Well, you turn the key and the engine doesn't start. They're probably going to get you the most upset. So I said, let's start with the engine plants, and so that's when he was involved early on. So reliability plants is a more safe and cost-effective plant. I just mentioned safe also. But on the bottom, think of those 14 things, that pyramid I had with the 14 elements of reliability. To me, that's how we assess plants and so on, and do that. But those 14 elements, the more you do those better, or the best practices that belong to those, you go from left to right on the bottom scale. It says reliability index. I call it the maturity of the reliability process. And on the left-hand side is production cost per unit. You do more of the reliability and maintainability, best practices, you can see what's happening with production costs. And this is the chart that I was referring to earlier. On the left-hand side, on the top left is reactive maintenance. For top quartile, 9%. Bottom quartile, 64%. But then I look at the maintenance cost as a percent of replacement asset value. There's more to it, but the simple definition is if your facility went away, what's the cost to replace it? They have the same stuff running again. That's a replace. It's not your insurance value. It's called replacement asset value. And there's a standard definition for that. But if you look at, we just call that maintenance cost. It's 2.1 for top quartile, 13.3 for bottom. You divide 13.3 by 2. That's where I get that 6 times more of the cost of running the business of maintenance in North America if you're bottom quartile in reactive maintenance. And I would want to at least get to second quartile. The biggest gap is here. You want to at least get the second if you can, then the top if it makes sense. Everybody has access to all these, but works better for some people than others. These tools have been around for a long time. The continuous improvement events, 5S, and the failure mode effects analysis, Six Sigma, value stream mapping, RCM, RCA, and so on. All that stuff's been around a long time. Works better for some than others. I ask companies where you're saving money on reliability and maintainability, what's really making the difference? And they pick, to me, what I call the simpler tools. The simpler tools are in the big programs. This is what they're saying is saving the money. It's the RC root cause analysis, whether it's 5 Whys or fish bones and so on, but getting the floor involved so they understand how to do this, and the floor is actually doing it. And reliability-centered maintenance was the second one. If you're doing a full reliability-centered maintenance, automatically you're doing FMEA, so those could be combined. And I get asked a lot, well, how does FMEA compare to RCM? Well, the way a lot of people do FMEAs today, they're almost doing RCM because they do PM optimization at the end, and there's all kinds of other stuff involved. There isn't that much difference in the way some people are doing it. And then visual controls, plan, do, check, act, and those are the biggies. They're saying most of our savings are coming from those kind of efforts in reliability and maintainability. Now studies, this one was Harvard, I think, from Harvard. It said cultural difference. Again, the word I'm going to use a lot is socio-technical. That's you got to do the people side of the business and the technology side of the business. The culture can account for 20 to 30% of the bottom line. If you take care of the big people side of the business also. Remember, culture stops us, getting better on the plant floor. And my data shows about 40%, so it's pretty close. So. And what you want to do is develop problem-solving eliminators. We don't have enough time to really get into Kaizen versus coaching and all that, but it's worth a shout out. You know, Kaizen events are good, still seeing savings. Lean over time, some savings. Not as good as Kaizen events. It's kind of, it stalemates real quick because again, people don't implement it right. Coaching, by that I mean, when you go out to the plant floor, you can go out and do a continuous improvement event and everybody kind of crashes it and those are pretty good, but you're not teaching the people. What you really want is a plant full of problem solvers. And when you go into a plant, or like when I go into a plant, when I just went into a Cadillac plant, every day I spend an hour on a safety walk and an hour doing continuous improvement mentoring. What that means is if I saw a problem or someone not doing their standardized work, they didn't get chewed out and say, well, what's going on? Why are you doing it that way? And teach them how to get to an answer. All right, so it might take you 3, 4, 5 trips to that same person on the plant floor. Not easy to do. Whereas you do a Kaizen event, you go in there, crash it, you're done, but you're not teaching that person. That did a 5 or teaching 5, now you got over 600 people that get it. You want a plant full of continuous improvement problem solvers, and you can only do that by coaching, and it's a different kind of commitment. Some plants got pretty good at it, struggled with it. And I wouldn't say names, but like big plants, you know, like 100, Fortune 100 companies, and go out there. Yeah, well, the boss, no, that's not coaching. You know? So it's an event. Worse. You got to get your problem. You got to take care of the. Think about your process. Yeah, I did a long history way back. To and then all of a sudden there was the stuff that we talk about today, designed for R&M, RCM, PM, FME. And all the plant floor. And I've seen that now with the data. H in the bottom, that was that airline study, the 6 curves that changes how we think about reliability and all that. But then here you got precision maintenance and how to change those things, big data, a lot of the cloud stuff, you know, a little more comprehensive analytics. When your machine learning, it really takes over, makes decisions for you. It's collecting the. You only need to check that every 3 months, and it actually pushes out the work orders, you know, a little less frequently. And your machine learning is doing that. That's prescriptive maintenance. Lufthansa Airlines, they took students there to the machine learning center years ago, and a lot of their planes now are managed like that. It's prescriptive maintenance, deciding, you know, you can wait till the next and so on that plane and so on. So machine learning, edge computing, artificial intelligence, and so on. But the biggest thing I see right now is data integrity. You trust the data. Right now, most people I see are struggling with that. Other things that you got to look at and how is it going to impact your business. 70 to 100 companies. Business model today, 5 years, and 70% said no. We're in the process of revamping our total business model with what's coming. And there's other things. I put purchasing for R&M up there because that's a pet peeve of mine. Purchasing still doesn't do a good job of life cycle costing, buying cheap and all that. And so I put it up there just because that one bothers me. Sooner or later, I got about 80% there with GM, but head of purchasing has the same power as the head of manufacturing, right? But they get beat up for buying low cost. Neural networks, quantum computing, I'm not going to talk about that today, but some crazy things happening there. Once quantum computing works, won't be a game changer, it'll be a world changer. Because right now it works best at absolute zero and out in outer space type temperatures, but it's kind of stuff that would take 35 years to calculate you can do in a second. And we've assessed the supercomputing complex at Oak Ridge, not in the and so on. Organization culture and R&M maturity. These are 8 plants that do exactly the same thing with the division of a large. Bottom are 13 of the 14 things of that pyramid I put up there, right? The average of the 13 are on the bottom, the points. And on the left-hand side is culture. So you can see how culture ties into maturity of the reliability process. You got to get the culture. The first plant we did is the one that's implemented, and then they eventually rolled across North. Directly to success and reliability and maintain. Might take a little longer, but you're going to get there. And I get asked, what do the best of the best do different? Well, it's the biggest thing is small team continuous improvement. Like I said, you got to coach the floor. People that get that do the best. Small team continuous improvement. They have a common practical problem solving tool. Some use A3s, just an oblong size of paper to do practical. You have a common process for the plant from the person that sweeps the floor to the plant manager. So everybody's talking the same language. What you really want to do is again, make a plant full of problem solvers using the same kind of information. And then the third one is the check and the plan to check act. And that's that coaching I talked about. It's not just check, but you go out and check and then you go coach. You coach along with it. And if you don't take the time with that, well, then do Kaizen events, but you're never going to have a plant full of problem solvers. What's tough too is right now, the Skills Coalition Institute, nearly 1 in 3 workers lack the foundational skills that are on the job today. %38 of workers with no digital skills have jobs that. That's North America today. Talk to big companies, and they're here. They have those issues, and now we're throwing all this digital at them. So the challenge is going to be is how do you take this digital stuff that's coming and get it to the people in a comfortable way that they're willing to support it? That's a big challenge. So I'm going to wind down with the next couple of slides. Oh yeah, that's been around for a while. Everybody says, what's Industry 4.0? Well, there really is no common definition. It's what you want it to be. It's all those things from the internet and the machine learning, and I want to list all the things for the sake of time. But they do that while Mesa, the big manufacturing show over there, a lot of that stuff comes out of there. Now they're talking Industry 5.0. So I want to say a few things. What's Industry 5.0? Well, it's everything Industry 4.0 is, except it's how to become more resilient, which is kind of like what happened during COVID, so that doesn't happen again. And it's also sustainability. How do we make sure we're sustainable? That also includes planet friendly, and so on. that, not burn up all our resources. I think one of the most important ones is to make it human-centric. So as we implement more machine learning and AI, is how do we implement tools so that the AI is helping people and giving them the right knowledge so we can use our ingenuity to invent new things and do that, and it makes us better, right? That's human-centric and so on. So that's part of Industry 5.0. So very quickly in the last 2 minutes here, I kind of call these my hard pills to swallow. Acknowledge the need for change. Most of the changes are going to be socio-technically. They're going to have a big cultural piece if you want to succeed. Recognize it's a journey in a place that rewards short-term rewards, so makes it tough. Assess where you're really at. Know what 1% of what you measure is worth. Understand how it's all related. Decide if you're able to get there, and it's obviously more than just map. Establish absolutes. People say, well, how do we change? Well, we've had up to 22 operating principles and absolutes we've developed with companies, and it's specific to companies. And you have to decide if we're going to, let's say, for example, you want to kit your part, something easy. You might just say, we're never going to put a part out there or a work order out there unless the parts are kitted. If you agree to that, then you shouldn't violate that. Otherwise, it should be discussed at the next staff meeting. That's a simple one between operations and maintenance and so on. To succeed, write down these absolutes between maintenance and operations, and they live by them. If not, they can get called out at the next staff meeting. I mean, there's always violating that because there's emergencies and stuff, with sign-offs and all that. But you need to do that. Set targets. You got lagging KPIs, stuff that's happened in the past, and you're measuring results like OSHA recordables, things like that. But leading KPIs are the KPIs that get you to the results that you want. It's doing the right things. And those leading KPIs, part that's often forgotten, is going to do in the reactive maintenance. That's not really supported. Develop a messed up. I think before
I have a question right here.
Spoke a lot about
Use your mic.
spoke a lot about culture, being the most significant thing that has to change. How do you change that? Because it's driven from the top, and it's a reflection of really a company itself and its values. So what have you seen has been effective to do that?
Well, there's a lot of things that can be done, but as far as changing the culture, first I'll say is you need about at least 10% of the plant to acknowledge something new, so you can start to get any kind of change. There's ways to assess how ready are you for change, or if you're ready for change. If you don't have at least 10% there, don't bother starting if you think you're going to go throughout the entire plant.
Yeah.
It means you need to tell people what are their concerns, and there's things like force field analysis and simple analysis that can be done. But cultures can be changed. I've seen phenomenal things, but it gets back to the coaching, the talking to the people, going through what's called force field analysis. Like, okay, here's what we're going to do is implement predictive maintenance, and people might say, well, is that going to take away my job? Or some like overtime, some don't, and so on. So you go through those kind of discussions, but it's not just you push a button and it's done.
Yeah.
So there's different programs that can take you through that.
Yeah, I guess the concern is that it could be seen as a scapegoat. You know what I mean? We don't want to change, so we'll just blame the culture. You know what I mean? Because it happens a lot.
Yeah.
Like when you implement any type of tool, even a process, right?
Yeah,
People will.
Yeah, it gets back to also that, unfortunately, leaders change so fast.
Yeah.
in plants, the culture changes all the time.
Exactly.
And culture change, I could ask, well, how long does it take? If you have a burning platform, like you're going out of business, you can probably do it in a year or two or so, but it might not last. But on average, I say 3 to 5 years. I say.
No, wow.
I can challenge on the culture piece just a little bit. You have to do a great job of articulating the why behind what you're doing. So the executive team needs to be wholly on board. They all need to be running up the same sheet of music. And then you drive that down to your frontline leadership to make sure they fully understand the why, get them on board, because they're setting the culture. It's not the shop floor people. The culture is set by leadership. So, and I think great tools are a lot of the frontline leadership training. DWI is a great opportunity to get culture in place, but you really have to have the fully understand the why, articulate tangibly the why, and then get your frontline to on board.
Yeah, so even if you're rolling out metrics and starting to change culture and doing that, they have to be put in the terms that the floor can understand. This may be the high level metric. What can I really do a difference on the plant floor? And do I have control of that? And do I believe it?
What you're talking about is the value driver,
Yeah.
right? There you can see like OEE trace all the way back down to something as simple as scheduling PMs on time. Yeah.
We call it line of sight.
Yeah.
But then when you get that leading KPI to drive that cultural change,
Yeah.
you've got to talk amongst management to say, what are we going to do different?
Yep.
How are we going to talk to them on the plant floor? So they know we're supporting that leading KPI.
Great question.